What's up guys, it is LateCom here. We are back with yet another Trove video on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 secrets that Trove millionaires don't actually want you to know about. But before we begin, I just want to highlight that this video will primarily be focusing on the middle game flux earning aspects. And if you haven't already watched any of the flux farming videos that we actually have on the channel, I suggest that you head on over down in the links in the descriptions below and check out a couple of those, because this video will be focusing on a couple of those methods and a little bit more advanced method on how these Trove millionaires actually work and how they actually earn their flux. But I guess let's get on with this video and let's begin. But before that, let's talk about what you should be doing to actually understand and to get rich in Trove. Because you will first need to understand how these millionaires in Trove actually earn their millions of flux and learn from their methods of flux earning. Of course, if you don't already learn how they're actually making their flux, how are you actually going to make your flux, right? So you will have to have, or you will need to have, the mindset of a Trove millionaire in order to actually become one. And that's basically pretty much common sense, right? So that's all I'm going to say before that. So let's head on over into the first point of today, in which they don't really want you to know that they barely farm anything. Yes, it might come off to a shock to you guys out there, because they really do not actually farm anything. Their main source of flux income mainly comes from marketplace flipping and gardening. Well, these two are going to be a passive income method, in which grinding is pretty much non-existent in these two methods. Because these flux earning methods are going to be exponential, meaning to say that the more flux they have, the more flux they will be able to profit off their initial investment. So let's say you invest 1 million, right, through this method, right? You invest 1 million through gardening, then you will be able to make like 20% of that amount. Let's say you earn 200,000 flux. And if you have invested like 10 million, you'll be able to earn like 2 million in flux from gardening, let's say. Just an example, not really real values, just a really rough idea of how these Trove millionaires actually increase their flux exponentially. So they really do not grind that much, or if they do, it's just the bare minimum. Because normal players, let's say like you or me, we're gonna be farming stuff for hours on end. We're gonna farm Uber 10, we're gonna be farming geode caves and stuff like that. But these methods, as you probably know, are only going to be in a linear fashion, right? Your flux only grows in a linear way, in which is going to be a big, problem. It's not gonna bring you anywhere, because if you were to, have a linear growth in flux at least, it will really be heavily dependent on the amount of time you invest on grinding in Trove. Because if you were to grind at, let's say, 400,000 flux per hour, that amount won't actually change if you were to keep on grinding that amount per hour, right? As opposed to, as I've said earlier, the more flux that you actually invest in those types of marketplace flippings and gardening, you will be able to increase the amounts of profit that you will be able to obtain as you go along with that similar method, if you get what I mean, right? And they are able to keep a constant flux income flow without much time invested, and it really saves your time to do other stuff, like be it in real life stuff, right? You don't have to spend as much time on Trove as it is. And we're going to be elaborating on these methods that they actually use further on in this video. So let's head on over onto the second point of today, in which is going to be none other than they don't really want you to know that selling Moonlight bulbs is not going to be worth it, right? Selling your Moonlight bulbs to other people really isn't really that worth it. The reason being is, if you probably didn't already know, almost every single rich gardeners in Trove, they buy their Moonlight bulbs from other players. If you really have a rough idea of what you should be doing in gardening, you should be using your Moonlight bulbs on profitable alchemy plants, and feel free to check out the links in the descriptions about information about gardening. And of course, this transaction of trading Moonlight bulbs can be done by giving the player who's farming the Moonlight bulbs for you the required materials needed to craft a certain amount and type of the alchemy seed, and the farmer of the Moonlight bulbs will then return the alchemy seed to the bulb buyer. This method is going to be really risky and should only be conducted if you know and trust the Moonlight bulb farmer. Why do they actually buy their Moonlight bulbs? Because they, for one, will be able to save time. They don't really have to farm for these Moonlight bulbs. They will be able to profit off simply by planting their seeds without needing to farm these bulbs themselves. And what this does is, as I said earlier, it's going to minimize the total amount of time they spend grinding, and at the same time they will also be able to make profit. And if we were to take a simple example though, let's say player X buys Moonlight bulbs at a price of, let's say, 1.5k flux each. Right, he plants the plants down, and after the whole cycle of 15 days, he will be able to receive a value of 2.5k or so per Moonlight bulb, in which he has bought from the farmer after minusing off the cost of planting by only planting down. Yes, by only placing down the plants for 15 days. He doesn't really have to do anything else, just that. He will be able to be slowly profiting through these passive income means. And at the end of the day, you will need to find ways to cut down the time necessary to farm for your flux, but still maintain a good amount of flux earned. And this is what most Trove millionaires are working towards or have already mastered. So let's move on to the next point that is going to be really important when it comes to market flipping, is that they don't really want you to know that they invest heavily in specific markets. They don't really want you to know which markets that you actually need to invest in, but we're going to be talking about that in this very video, because they also allocate certain budgets to each of these markets, because this is going to diversify their risk. So let's first talk about these certain specific markets. Where do these rich players actually invest their flux in? First off, and it's gonna be the most popular, it's definitely Luxin items, because these players are going to be spending at least a decent percentage of their flux on investing in Luxin items, because usually they will be able to net 2 times the profit in the long run. Well, by long run, I do not simply mean just 1 month down the road, as these players are going to be very patient, and they will be affording to wait for several months to actually profit, even threefold or even rarely 4, multiplied by 4 times of their initial investment, in which they're going to be waiting quite a long time, but it is really going to be worth it, because they don't really have to do anything else by just buying that item. They're just going to be waiting it out for a couple of months, and they're going to be selling it for twice, thrice, or even quadruple the price. So secondly, the second market that they kind of invest in is going to be expensive necessary items, such as stuff like golden dragon eggs or rare mounts, in which are usually worth upwards of 1 million flux. In this sector, they're going to be spending a small chunk of their flux on buying items to flip them, with the most common example being golden dragon eggs. Let's say the same player X buys a golden block dragon egg, okay, from the market at, let's say, 2 million flux from a desperate player who needs flux as soon as possible, with the next listing in the market at 3.5 million. They will be able to list the item directly below the next cheapest price, let's say about 3.4 million, right, 100,000 flux undercutting the next best price, and wait for a sale in the long run. They usually are willing to wait a couple of days for a sale to a week, and are patient enough to not lower the price as most of us impatient players would. So essentially, right, you really don't want to be impatient with your flux. You don't want to overspend your flux. You don't want to spend your flux on unnecessary items that you don't actually need. You definitely don't want to gamble your flux on stuff like boxes, because it is definitely not going to help you increase your flux amount, and just gambling on boxes is just not going to be a really good idea. And this is something that these millionaires do not ever do, because it is definitely going to end up bad for you in the long run. So, talking about losses, in the fourth point, these millionaires, like every other player, will also experience losses at times in their investment. Although minimal, these players too experience losses due to the wrong judgment in their investment decisions. Not everything is a guaranteed profit, and this goes to for most market flippers. Market flipping is going to be a risk in and in itself, which goes to show that most experienced market flippers are also exceptionally skilled risk takers. This doesn't really apply for the richest who rely on gardening for profit. However, because gardening is a surefire way of profiting at the end of the day, But with that being said, you should not bow out of deals that may make you a big profit, as risk taking is going to be commonplace in the world of flipping on Trove. You will need to take risks in order to earn great rewards, and you should not be scared to take the risk as long as the odds could possibly be in your favor. And the fifth and the most important point in this video is that these millionaires observe market patterns and strike when the iron is hot. Yes, it is going to be one of the most important things that one of these or most of these richest players actually adopt. They familiarize themselves with the market and its prices, also with the fluctuating patterns, and they take advantages of opportunities. You will also really need to be very aware of the current market and where it is currently heading in order to make good decisions. This is also how the richest in Trove minimize their mistakes in judgment and minimize their bad investments. So they buy when the price hits an all-time low, they sell when the prices are exceptionally high. They do it without hesitation, as they know through experience that the decision made will be a good one from their intuition and past experiences. With that being said, you'll need to gain more experience over time and become more patient when it comes to earning flux. You can't actually become a millionaire in Trove in one single day, unless that is you pull a scythe and roll in the dough. And I guess that'll probably be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to leave a like as well as subscribe. And make sure to comment down below on what your opinions are on how you earn flux and what you think your flux making methods are making you the most flux as of right now. And as usual, I hope to see you guys in the next video, and peace out.